Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Bree. Today's video, we're going to go through a fall recommendations for you. So I picked out about 6 books that I think could really work for the fall season. I made this a couple times, so I'll have a playlist linked down below where you can find all my past fall recommendations, so that if you want even more recommendations, you can look there, because I'm trying not to repeat any ones that I've already done. The criteria I've kind of tried to keep for this is that I wanted things that were a little bit spookier or had a darker atmosphere to them. I've kind of gone through horror and fantasy is the primary genres here, and we'll have just spooky vibes in general is kind of where I'm going for this. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get into the video. So the first book I have is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This is her kind of second series debut. So she started with One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, which I really enjoyed and liked at the time, and that would also work for the fall vibes, but this is her newest release. So this is following a young woman who works in kind of like a convent, and she is a diviner. So she does this ritual where she goes into the pool and drowns, and then she sees different figures and kind of tells people their fortune. And one day this night, with the prince or king, I guess, of the realm come and visit, and things aren't exactly what she thinks, and so it kicks off an adventure from there. I did really like this one. I will say it had a lot of similar things to One Dark Window, so it didn't wholly work for me, but I think it's worked for a lot of people, and it's got the perfect atmosphere. You have kind of a medieval setting here, so the whole vibes just feel spooky and eerie the whole time. She does really write atmosphere really well. That's one thing that in the other series I found as well, is like you're immersed into the story and the atmosphere is and the vibes of fall. So it also has a romance to it as well. I think this is classed as fantasy romance. On the range of fantasy romance to just more fantasy with romance, I think this leans somewhere in the middle. I do feel like the romance took up a good chunk of the story, but also there's so much more to the story as well. So I don't know if this is going to be a duology like her last series, or if it's going to be a trilogy. I'm not really sure, but if you're wanting to dive in to the first in the series, this is a great place to start, because the first one just got released, and I think it gives that perfect kind of medieval spooky vibe that I think is perfect for the fall time. Next is 3 books, but I'm gonna kind of count them as one because it's in a series. So if you started the first one, I think you could read any of these and it would work for fall. So that is the Sworn Soldier novella series. This is by T.K. Fisher. The first one is What Moves the Dead, which is a bit of like a fungal horror. And they're all kind of retellings of famous stories. So in this one, it is a retelling of the fall of the House of Usher, and it takes its own spin on it, and we're following a soldier who is come back from the war and is going to their friend's house. Things aren't as they seem. They have been getting letters from their friend that are cryptic and not like them, so they want to go check it out. And from there, a lot of things ensue, and we follow them throughout the course of the series and the different like things they encounter along the way. This just was released on the 30th of September, so I haven't read this yet to recommend it, but I have read these 2, and I really enjoyed both of them. I think this one is probably my favorite, but I think that this followed up the first one really well. So I think that you really could read any of these and have a good time, because I think this kind of novella series is really fun for the fall time because they're not too long, but they are spooky. And then T.K. Fisher also has this like always an element of humor to it that I think makes what's happening, while it is like a horror book, it makes it seem a little bit less intimidating, especially if you're newer to horror. I think that T.K. Fisher could be a really good place to start. So that's why I recommend this series. Then a recent 5-star favorite of the year, and that is The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas. I swear she can do no wrong for me. This is a possession story, as the title suggests, and we're following Alba Diaz as she goes into this mine and she comes out possessed. And what I like about Isabel Cañas is that she weaves together a lot of different things. We get this story of possession, and it's very horrific, but it's also a love story. We have a love story between her and another character who is also working in the mines. Isabel Cañas just really draws you in right away. I think this is my 3rd favorite out of all this Isabel Cañas's. So we have The Hacienda and The Vampires of El Norte. I think Vampires of El Norte is my favorite, then The Hacienda, then this one, but they all rank very highly for me. And they are horror, And there's parts in here that really get horrific and that are hard to read, especially like with the possession story side of it. But at the same time, there's lots of moments of calm and yearning and other things going on where we're in the characters' heads that I think make the story feel more like a spooky tale rather than outright horrific. And I think it really works for fall season. If you haven't read Isabel Cañas, I highly suggest, especially if you like any kind of horror or like a historical, dark, moody vibe. Though I will say, I think her horrors go light on the horror, so if you like something a little darker, I don't know if this will work for you, but if you like yearning and you want a little bit of spooky horror times, might I suggest Isabel Cañas, and specifically The Possession of Alba Diaz, because I really enjoyed this one. Then we have another 5-star that I got recently, and that is Bat Eater and Other Names for Corzang by Kylie Lee Baker. This is my first Kylie Lee Baker. I believe she's written like fantasy books before, and I might have to pick them up because I never heard of her until this book came out and everybody's been raving about it. I will say this takes place during the pandemic and deals with a lot of racism against Asian people, and so if that is a trigger for you, I would just keep that in mind. So we're following Corzang, who really horrifically witnesses her sister's death, and it really changes her. She has a lot of things going on in her life before this happens, but after, it really makes her spiral. And then there's some encounters with ghost elements to the story as well. It really plays up like a lot of things about identity, but also about racism. And it also really brings in this like female rage element to it, and just like rage about your situation and wanting to change the system, but knowing that there's really not a lot you can do. She's also a crime scene cleaner, and so there are very gory scenes of just like cleaning crime scenes. And then there's like a friendship dynamic here between her and her two coworkers that I enjoyed. But this just goes on a wild ride as well. The whole time, like once you kind of get to know what's happening with the horror, it really takes off. And so this one, I'd suggest if you want something that you just like can't put down, if you want something that's kind of like gonna keep you up at night a little bit, I think I would suggest this one. This one's like perfect for around the campfire spooky tales kind of feel, even though that's usually a summer thing. I think it will perfectly work for fall. So I would highly suggest, and I think it is popular for good reason. Then we have two more. One is Foul Days by Genoveva Demova. This is a like Slavic folklore tale about a young woman who is a witch, and there's like two sides to this world. There's like a side that has to deal with monsters, and there's different like cycles of when the monsters come out, and then there's the richer side that is kind of cut off from this side and leaves her hometown to like deal with the monsters and everything while they get to live this cushy life. And at the beginning of the story, there is an event that occurs that makes her have to deal with consequences from her past. And I will say there's huge trigger warnings in here for domestic violence and for abuse and things like that. And so just know that going in, but I think for me personally, it did it in a way that really highlighted a lot of the struggles of domestic violence. And so I appreciate it for that. But we're following her as she's trying to have this one night to put to right something that's happening with the monsters to save the city. And it's just very fun. I like the audiobook as well. I think it really brings out the character. And we're also working with like a detective from the rich area and him and his story. And I just think it's a perfect time for like spooky times because it has all these monsters and magical things going on that I think it really speaks to like things that go bump in the night kind of vibe. It does, a comp for it is The Witcher, and I do get that because there's like almost a lot of monster hunting in here, and it's only a duology, which the second one is out, and I did read it. It's called Monstrous Nights, and it wrapped this up really well. So I think if you want something that you can kind of binge in its entirety, this would also really work for that. And I think it's like one of those stories that I think hasn't gotten enough hype on YouTube, and I thought it was really fun when I read it. And it's just like not Monster of the Week vibes because it has a full like story, but it kind of gives you that same feeling of like monster hunting. So I really enjoyed it. And then the final book is Serpent in the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I picked this because it's got the vampire vibes and it's got a competition and it's very dark feeling. So we're following a woman who is adopted by a vampire at a very young age, and she's a human. And in this world, vampires rule everything, and humans are very much like hunted and unsafe in this world. And so she's taken in by the vampire king and raised among vampires. And then she is put into this competition where she is supposed to compete, and the person who wins gets like a boon essentially. and she's trying to get it so that she can not be afraid of vampires anymore. And also her father figure is trying to push her into this competition. And there is a romance between her and another character in here. It's a very like dark story because you start off, it really kicks off right away, and you start off with this competition that is very deadly. Like there are very high stakes in here, and you're watching her have to navigate being weaker than a bunch of other people. And so the whole atmosphere just feels very dark from the beginning. Plus, I think vampires are very quintessential fall theme. I tend to like to read vampires any time of year, but really I love reading about them in the fall. So I think this one would be a really good addition. And it's also a romantasy, so it has romance as well in it. And I will say it's a bit of a slow burn, but once it like happens, I think it's really a bigger part of the story. I didn't enjoy the second part of this duology as much, but I just think this is a perfect fall vibes. And you might like the second one more than me. I just think it focused more on the romance than I like. But when I read this, I could not put it down. I was having so much fun. I flew through it. So I'd highly recommend, and it's got vampires for fall. So there you go. There are all the books I recommend for fall. If you want even more of recommendations, like I said, I will have them in a playlist for you down below. And if you have any fall recommendations, please leave them down below because I'm also looking for spooky books. I have a couple on my TBR that I think I made a fall TBR video you can check out, but as always, I would like more recommendations. So if you made it this far, leave a pumpkin emoji down below or a ghost emoji down below. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.